As the fighting in Sudan enters its sixth week, it is forcing hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homes. According to a new report from the United Nations International Organization for Migration, more than 1 million people have been displaced in Sudan. More than 300,000 have fled to neighboring countries, 80,000 of them to Chad. Our CNN correspondent Larry Madoa reports for us tonight. It's a report you'll only see on CNN.
The kids cry constantly. The adults look weary of war. The pained faces here are a reminder of the horrors that drove them out of Sudan. At this refugee camp across the border in Chad, sadness stalks almost everyone. As fighting intensified in Sudan's western Darfur region, they had to run or risk getting killed. Kubra Abdallah left so suddenly that her son got lost in the chaos.
My brother is still back there. I heard he was injured. I was forced to come to Chad to seek safety.
Would you go back to Sudan?
No. The only reason I will go back is to bring my child and my brother here. There has been too much insecurity for too long.
Because of decades of conflict in Sudan, many of these refugees had already been internally displaced several times. Mastura Ishaq is 22, but hasn't known a permanent home for most of her life.
I'm worried about all the people we left behind, especially my mother who could not cross the border. I keep asking myself how I can get her to Chad.
I noticed there are mostly women and children here. Where are the men from Sudan?
The men told us to take the children and cross the border so they can stay behind to defend themselves and our property if necessary.
The UN's refugee agency says close to 90% of new arrivals in Chad from Sudan are women and children, many so traumatized that they will need a lot of support to heal. We had expected to meet refugees as they arrived in the border town of Kufron, right across from Sudan. But just before we arrived, it was hit by a rocket. That is why refugees are being moved away from border towns to places like this in Gaga. CNN traveled with USAID Administrator Samantha Power to eastern Chad. The US is giving more than $100 million to support the over 1 million people displaced by the war across Sudan and in neighboring countries.
We met one woman whose eye had been gouged, basically with somebody just attacking her, and she's seeking medical care here in Chad. Horrific violence, which triggers, for so many of these people, also memories of previous horrific violence.
It's a full circle moment for her. She was in Chad in 2004, writing in The New Yorker about Sudanese civilians fleeing the Janjaweed militia in Darfur.
You talk to them, you feel like you're in a time warp because they're describing Janjaweed coming in with their knives and their machetes, killing people, raping women.
Is it surreal for you being here, hearing these stories when you heard them 20 years ago as a reporter?
Well, I feel lucky this time at least to be working at USAID, a big development humanitarian agency. At least there's something I can do. But fundamentally, there is no substitute for the root causes getting addressed, for these two warring generals to put their own power grabs aside and put the interests of these people who are fleeing sometimes for the 5th time in their lives.
Chad, one of the world's poorest countries, had about 400,000 Sudanese refugees before this latest surge.
We need to collectively, work with all the actors in support to the government of Chad to ensure that, resources are mobilized to address the urgent needs of the refugees.
What's your name? These are the innocent victims of a deadly power struggle in Sudan.
Stand to the camera.
The poor and most vulnerable, who have nowhere to go. Just another chapter in a life of hardship. Anderson, this Sudan conflict has quickly spilled over into a regional refugee crisis. These latest statistics from the UN are significant. 1.3 million people displaced, mostly in Sudan, but over 300,000 have crossed into neighboring countries like Egypt and Chad. The refugees I met in eastern Chad don't live in comfortable conditions. The heat alone, it's more than 110 degrees Fahrenheit. They live in these makeshift structures in the desert, but they still prefer that. It's safer for them than in Darfur, where they've come from. So many of them have been displaced, sometimes up to 5 times. And they don't care which of the two warring generals in Sudan wins this. They just want peace. They want the same things you and I want, a chance at a dignified life, and they will go back for whoever can deliver that for them. Anderson.
Larry Madoa reporting. Thank you.